All right, welcome back. Another episode of Hockey North Weekly. I'm your host, Tyler Lazat, here with Brendan Palu. Brendan, how are you doing today?
Good, I'm well. Now, got to Arizona safely. Been here a few days now. A little bit burnt on the face, enjoying the sun, but still pretty nice here for end of February, early March now.
Yeah, I know it's starting to warm up here a bit in Prince George, but you took it up a whole other level there in Phoenix, and maybe just tell us what you're doing down there.
Just on vacation with me and my parents. Second time we've done this in the past couple of years. Going to see a whole bunch of sporting events. Saw a women's basketball game, Arizona State against Arizona. Then we saw a university baseball game. Arizona State winning 8-7 over University of Minnesota. Gonna see a handful of spring training games, an NBA game, a whole bunch of other sporting events over the next couple weeks. A lot of shopping, a lot of sightseeing, go to restaurants that we like to go to around here. So it's a nice end of winter, early spring getaway for us, that's for sure.
Awesome. I'm glad you guys are having a good time. And let's break into some playoff updates here for the BC Elite Hockey League. Of course, the U15 AAA championship has been concluded. The U15 AAA Caribou Cougars, they did make it all the way to the championship game. They ended up dropping that one by a score of 5-1 to the Okanagan Rockets. So congratulations to the Okanagan Rockets on getting the championship victory. And hats off to this U15 Caribou Cougars team that has played a lot of exciting hockey. They played incredibly well through that tournament. They've been battling a lot of sickness and injuries heading into that weekend, and I thought they did very well.
Yeah, it's a credit to this team. Obviously, Merced had them winning the tournament last year. He came one game short of repeating this year, but Okanagan, they were the class of the age group this year, tops for most of the year. Braden Jugnoth, the youngest of the kids, having a record-breaking season. I think over 40 goals in the U15 BC Elite Hockey League Conference, most ever in that age group. So this is a highly charged offensive team in Okanagan that knows how to put the puck in the net. And of course, Brendan Purich, 48 saves on 53 shots. Good on him for holding in as long as he could. And it just, sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. It was still a great run by this group that played a lot of, you know, very close games that could have went right down to the wire, and they did and they pulled it out, but just came up one win short.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes that's the way that it goes, and nothing to be too hung up about. That the boys did play very, very good at the weekend there, and Kadrick Moichin once again highlighting the scoring sheet for the C15 club.
Yeah, Kadrick Boynchin, a lot of goals, a lot of points. Lincoln Philpotts, a couple clutch goals. Nigel Nitschke, Reese Barnes. I mean, you know, while Kadrick gets the vast majority of the headlines, and deservedly so, the supporting cast around him as well chipped in with some timely contributions, and that this group deserves a big pat on the back. I mean, they came within one win of repeating, and like I said, there was some times there, of course, during the tournament, you had a close call there against Thompson, another close call against one of the other teams where it could have went the other way, but this is a team that was exciting to watch, a team that, has a lot of potential long term as well as short term for the kids that, are eligible to come back next year. But, this group, made us very proud, made the North very proud, and should hold their heads up high after the playoffs that they had.
Well said. And moving on to the U17 AAA division, the Caribou Cougars did face the Hawks. They did drop the first game on Friday, and then they came back and got back even and tied the series up a one apiece on the Saturday, and led to inevitably losing 7-2 on the Sunday in the deciding game. So the Hawks will advance to the second round in that division standing, but this U17 team, they've battled through a lot this year. They've almost never been fully healthy. And I really felt like this group really started to put it together down the stretch here. And I think there's a lot to be proud of for the team.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because you talk about the injuries, you talk about the suspensions and stuff of that nature. And you just get the sense that we never really saw the full potential of this team through at any point in the season. Just given those factors, you had Liam Elstad hurt a couple times. You have Vinny Vasallo, a lot of other suspensions. Spencer Latkowski was out for quite a while, and it was just this group, despite as much upside as it had, just never could really put it together or sustain success for a long period of time. And that's going to be one of the bugaboos, not only amongst the players, but the coaches too, knowing, what could have been if they could have gotten some luck, with the injury bug or not have as many suspensions or, similar to the U15s in the final against Okanagan, could have gotten a goal here and a goal there to maybe climb up the standings a little bit higher than they would have liked to. And it's tough. I mean, you just a lot of times you gotta play the cards that you're dealt, and unfortunately, U17s were kind of playing from behind and playing with a bit of a bad hand all the way through up until the very end.
Yeah, and on a positive note, concluding the month of February, Matthias Ramos Gadbois was named the U17 AAA goaltender of the month. And rightfully so, he'd been spectacular and he really kept his team in it down to the very end.
Yeah, Ramos, bit of a wall inside the net. Him and Ivan Anderson, uh, you know, pretty solid tandem, but you definitely tell the added experience level of a Ramos Gadbois and the maturity and just the added seasoning that he does have. And, there's obviously a consensus that he'll probably make the jump to U18 next year, given the fact he started the year with the U18s. And, just, someone that has paid his dues through the developmental system and, you know, finished probably as strong, if not the strongest among all the net miners and certainly the rest of his peers across the league agreed, hence him getting that honor towards the very end of the season.
Yeah, very, very good to see him get that achievement and recognition. And we're going to look ahead to this weekend. We have the U18 AAA Caribou Cougars hosting the Thompson Blazers Friday, Saturday, and Sunday here in Kin number 2 in Prince George. Let's break down that matchup. I mean, from the looks of it, the Caribou Cougars did finish at the top of the standings at the end of the season. Thompson getting in by default, being at the bottom of the stack. But this Thompson team has shown a few times over the season, that they can be a bit of a sleeper. They can come in, they can play a structured game and kind of hang around for a bit. But do you think that'll be enough to cause any form of concern or upset for the Caribou Cougars heading into the weekend?
It shouldn't because Caribou on paper does have the better team. That being said, when it is playoffs, everybody's record resets to zeros across the board, and Caribou has to go in with the mindset of being hungry, tenacious, playing the way that they're capable of, and to not take their opponent lightly. The longer a lower seeded team hangs around, the more they believe they can beat you, and that's something you do not want to have happen if you're head coach Tyler Bruff and company, and you're playing a 4-win team that's been eighth all year. They do have a couple of weapons at their disposal, which is all the more reason not to take them lightly. But you got to go in hungry. You got to know that you're the number one seed and that you got to take care of business at home to get to where you want to go in terms of the league finals. And it starts with a Blazers team that you should beat in theory on paper.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself, and it's going to be a lot of exciting action here in Kin number 2. And on that note as well, for the U18 AAA division, for the month of February, goaltender Andriy Ligas has also been named the goaltender of the month for the U18 AAA. So two Caribou netminders who have played incredibly well down the stretch here, getting some much deserved recognition.
Yeah, and he's part of that 1-2 stretch, the 1-2 combination rather, between him and signed Seattle Thunderbirds prospect Jackson Dicker. Just seems like whenever the one has gone cold or one has faltered, the other has picked each other up and has played equally as well. And it's a good problem to have if you're the coaching staff to have a credible 1-2 punch in the back end, in the crease. And, when you can win with either guy, that kind of makes your life a lot easier, not only as a player, but as a coaching staff. And to know that, either option is a good option to play in goal helps Caribou's chances a lot heading into the playoffs in terms of at least attempting to win a championship because, let's face it, good goaltending is hard to find at any level. And especially when you have a good, reliable 1-2 punch like the Cougars got, it is something to be desired.
Very well said. I mean, it's nice to have that level of depth and confidence in the goaltending position. And I mean, it's one thing to look at too. You look at it if there's the unforeseen circumstance, one of the two goes down. There's always that option to call up either Ivan Anderson or Matthias Ramos Gadbois as well. And both those guys have had a cup of tea there with U18s throughout the season, and both goaltenders looked excellent. So I think it's a really good situation for the Caribou Cougars in that regard. And just a big testament to the work that the coaching staff, goaltending coach Chris Joyce and company has done with the goaltending pipeline here in the north.
Yeah, it's been vastly improved. I mean, there were a couple years there where, it was hard to get that big save or, we didn't quite have that elite goaltender for a couple of seasons there. And it really makes the jaunt up the standings and it kind of makes any adversity you face in a game that much more daunting when you're not getting the saves, when you're not getting the routine stops or the confidence boosters or there's big penalty kills, and your goaltender has a lot to do with that. So it's really up to them every night from the back end out to be solid. Our defensive core as a whole has a huge part to play in that, but uh, it's very important to continue getting the saves from your goaltender at the most opportune times.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. And moving along here, what is going on around the north for hockey here?
Well, what's going on around the north? We do have the Kootenay International Junior Hockey League playoffs going on. As we're recording this, the Williams Lake Mustangs are on the ice against the 100 Mile House Wranglers, tied 1-1 best of seven series. Quesnel River Rush down 2-0 against Kamloops. As we're recording this, they were up 2-0 against the Storm in the second period. Well, check that score again for you here, and a big game three for them. Oh, it's now 4-3 for Kamloops late second. So, the River Rush trying to avoid a 3-0 hole here against the Storm. Of course, you have Vanderhoof's Ella Boone, part of that epic series with the Trinity Western Spartans falling short to the Manitoba Bisons just a week ago in that marathon overtime game where they lost game two, and then unfortunately lost game three. Casey Dittner, of course, a member of the Northern Capitals as well, also part of the Trinity Western Spartans. Two players who we just interviewed, Kira Mulder and Keegan Goulet, former Northern Capital graduates, said they're moving on in their Alberta Female Junior Hockey League series with the Edmonton Wolves. So best of luck to them. Brooke Disher and the Ohio State Buckeyes, they're gearing up for playoffs in the NCAA. Brooke Disher, of course, native of Fort St. John. Brett Fudger with his college team out in New York there. They're in the league finals in their conference as well. So congratulations on Brett Fudger of Prince Rupert for his team to push through and to have the season that they're having. Of course, Curtis Hammond with St. Norbert, they're in the midst of their playoffs there in the Division III conference of the NCAA. I'll just punch up St. Norbert's schedule here while I do have a minute. Take a look at the schedule here in terms of the playoff schedule. And, they made it through against Concordia, won March 1st against Trine University, and the semifinal game 6-1. So on Saturday, March 8th, they'll be taking on Adrian College in the championship game from Wisconsin. So they're hosting the Harris Cup playoffs all the way through. Um, is St. Norbert. So Adrian College ranked number 9 in the country in terms of Division 3 programs. And then after that, if Curtis and Hammond and company make it through, they'll be in the NCAA Division 3 tournament, which starts March 15th. Locations to be decided there. I did say Brett Fudger as well in regards to his team in the southern New York there. We just saw the Instagram story over the weekend. I'm just gonna punch up the, the schedule here as I have a moment with Sonny
Hey, Paul, if
Oswego, NCAA Division
I
3.
I don't hear your audio.
Oh, oh. Am I good now?
Yep.
Yeah. Sonny Oswego here, NCAA Division 3. I'll punch that up. They are punch their ticket to the finals, so we'll just punch up the Oswego schedule here. The athletics. It's it's a good time to be a fan of Northern and Caribou hockey products here, as we mentioned. As we'll give it a second to load, as the internet's a bit slow where I am, but we take a look here. They're going to take on Plattsburgh State in the SUNYAC Championship, and then they potentially could go on to the Division 3 championships as well in the 15th. So you could have a scenario where Brett Fudger and Curtis Hammond um, could be playing against each other in the Division 3 championship. So that'll be something that would be fun to see for those Caribou Cougar supporters. Western Hockey League, of course. We're getting down to the wire there is Prince George Cougars going a perfect 4-for-4 over the week to beat Kamloops and Kelowna. Prince George, though, still 5 points back of the Victoria Royals for top spot in the BC division. Of course, the Royals and the Cougars will play twice at the end of the season. So there's that. Vancouver Giants, led by Cameron Schmidt, they're sitting 7th in the Western Conference. They are 2 points back of the now 5th-place Tri-City Americans, who leapfrogged the Portland Winterhawks over the weekend. They are in 5th. So, Vancouver, Tri-City, Prince George, along with Portland, all in that cluster of teams, 4 through 7, although really the race is between 5, 6, and 7 in terms of the jockeying for positioning. Then you have Colton Garrier and the Seattle Thunderbirds. They're trying to occupy that 8th spot. They're 3 points ahead of the Wenatchee Wild, 3rd place in the Eastern Conference there. You've got former Prince George Cougar and Saskatoon Blade Hunter Lang lighting it up with the Saskatoon Blades there in 7th. In the Eastern Conference, Evan Gardner coming back from injury. He backed up over the weekend. So, good luck to both of them down the stretch. Miguel Marquez looking for an update in regards to his injury to the Lethbridge Hurricanes. They are 4th in the Eastern Conference. So they got 7 games left trying to jockey for position. They are taking a look at things. They're 4 back of Calgary for 2nd in the division and 3rd in the conference. 6 back of Medicine Hat. Calgary has a game up on Lethbridge. Lethbridge has a game in hand on Medicine Hat. So, they're in a tough spot there. I don't think they'll get higher than 4th, but we'll see. Then, of course, you got the surging Spokane Chiefs with Smith Redmond, Chase Harrington doing very well. They're in 3rd. They continue to be red hot down the stretch for Spokane. Don't think they're going to catch Everett in terms of the top spot of the Western Conference. I think they have 3rd all sewn up there. So I think Spokane will get at least one round at home in the Western Hockey League playoffs. So there's that. Also, we take a look at the SJHL, MJHL playoffs are starting there. You've got obviously Landon Alexander, Reed Arbery with Flin Flon, Josh Sale with Weyburn, Owen Wilkinson, Tyson Matthews with LaRange. MJHL, you got Portage Near the top, you've got Scott Cousins, Will McKay. You also got Declan Moichen, of course, leading the charge there. So, lots to look forward to in terms of the playoffs for the major junior and junior A playoff ranks as I take a look at the standings here in the MJHL. Portage with a record of 38-14-0-1. They're actually only third spot in the East Division. Steinbach is in second. Winkler is in first. They're 42-7-3-1. So that's a very stacked division this year in the NJHL. So as solid as Portage has been, they still got a bit of a tough time to get out of the eastern side of the standings. But, we'll see if they can pull through there as well. So, yeah, there you have it. Lots going on here. And let's not forget Northern Capital starting up not this weekend, but next weekend, 14th, 15th, and 16th against the Fraser Valley Rush.
Yeah, it's going to be a very good series there for the Northern Capitals. And luckily for them, they have had a couple of weeks here to prepare for it. And they had a strong finish to the regular season. And I think, the last few outings they had with Fraser Valley, they didn't quite get the results that they were hoping for. And that's just going to be added motivation for the girls as they go in to try and make an upset there down in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah, and you take a look at seeds 2, 3, and 4. Not much to choose from between the Capitals, the Rush, or the Thompson Okanagan Lakers. But one thing I do want to say, and we've said this a lot at the rink, just how much of a junior caliber system the Capitals are playing now under Hayden James Barra, especially on that forecheck that we see, getting a ton of shots against the Lakers at the season-ending series against Thompson Okanagan at home. So there's lots to be desired there if you're the Capitals. You just got to find a way to continue play the right way against Fraser Valley. They also have some weapons that can hurt you as well. So it's very imperative, I think, for the Capitals, to play that responsible 200-foot game to end up beating Fraser Valley in a 2 or a 3 game set.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of really good games between these two clubs over the season here. And, I think back to the Winter Classic weekend, the Northern Capitals, they got a really nice, convincing victory on the outdoor rink at the Ernie Sam. And in Vanderhoof, they played excellent as well. So, they've proven that they can hang around with this Fraser Valley team. And I feel like consistency is going to be key for them as their effort needs to be there and they need to continue to build on the momentum that they've been putting together here down the stretch.
And speaking of the Capitals, I want to send my congratulations to both Gabby Meyer and former Northern Capital Nyla Evans to committing to the Red Deer College Queens women's hockey program in the ACAC, as well as Vanderhoof's Lauren Baker, who will be playing junior hockey with the Edmonton Wolves. So congratulations to the three of them in regards to punching their ticket to playing higher caliber of hockey next season. So congratulations to those three ladies. And yet, there's three more players that the Capitals have helped produce on the way to that level. And, we see it as well. Abby Bryant lighting up the ACAC. You've got Jessa Brewer with Saint. A lot of players playing in that conference in the Capitals. Anna Stewart, Sage Norr with Medicine Hat College. And, just goes to show, even if you're not on a main U Sports roster, they are finding a way to make some noise collegiately north of the border. Of course, I'd be remiss to forget Haley Armstrong, who's having a good season with Bemidji State down in Minnesota. So, the proof is in the pudding. Capitals players are getting noticed at those next levels, and it's a nice thing to see.
Yeah, it's really encouraging to see the volume of players that are getting that opportunity to move on and continue playing hockey and pursuing their education. It's one of the beautiful things I think about this sport, especially for a lot of the players here in our region.
Yeah, and of course, moving on here is Prince George Spruce Kings. They were on the road for 3 games over the weekend. They bookended with a pair of losses to Coquitlam and Salmon Arm, but in the middle, ended up beating the Surrey Eagles. They remained 3 points back of the Langley Rivermen Langley losing 7-6 in overtime to Cowichan Valley. Kind of a costly loss for Langley as Langley was up 5-0 in that game and ended up losing 7-6 in overtime to Cowichan Valley. So a huge break there for the Spruce Kings as they have two massive games at home against Langley Friday and Saturday. If there was ever a time to be tied or potentially ahead in the playoffs race, now is it for the Spruce Kings as you have the team that you're trying to catch in your home barn Friday and Saturday at the Cole Palmer Memorial Arena. And, it's right there for the taking for the Spruce Kings.
Yeah, I mean it's all the momentum in their court now with having those two games at home coming up here, and I know they didn't quite get the results they wanted there on the road, but they have been playing really good hockey here in the last couple of months, and it's encouraging to see. And you can definitely tell by the way that they're playing that there's that sense of belief within that locker room that they can go out there and run with anybody else in the league. And Gravel being added to the crease has been such a boost for this hockey team, and I think that there's going to be a lot of exciting hockey as the Spruce Kings are branding March Madness, as there's a lot of important games coming up, a lot of points that the Spruce Kings need to get, and Spruce Kings fans better be ready.
Yeah, a lot of home games too. You also got a Sunday date in there with Sherwood Park. You've got the end of the season against Powell River on a Saturday and a Sunday weekend matchup where you have the 6 o'clock start followed by 3 p.m. on a Sunday. So lots of valuable points for the taking here for the Spruce Kings, and they're right there, and it's there for the taking for them if they want it bad enough. And, I'm pretty sure they do, despite, kind of like the U17s, despite everything that's gone wrong with, removing the coach, losing some high caliber players to Major Junior, despite all of that, they still find themselves in a good position to clinch a playoff spot with about 12 games left.
Well, Brendan, it kind of takes me back to a conversation we had on this show a few episodes ago, right? With a lot of these players getting the opportunity to go now play Major Junior to retain or still acquire NCAA eligibility, all it did was create opportunity for a lot of these players that maybe were in a role that was less than what they were maybe expecting or what they wanted to work for. And now a lot of these opportunities to work your way up the lineup and establish yourself in this league came about. And I think with the Spruce Kings, a lot of players really have stepped up, and I think it's been a really encouraging thing to see. And I think you're seeing a lot of that throughout the entirety of the BCHL as they've navigated these uncharted territories.
Yeah, it's very well said, and I'm very happy for the kids that have continued to battle, continue to push, and are still right there as they try and stay, hot on the heels of the Langley Rivermen.
Very well said.
So now we got two guests here this week on our show. We have David Hoy, the Fort St. James product and rookie forward of the Portland Winterhawks, as well as Mackenzie, BC's Scott Burt, who is the head coach in the ECHL with the Rapid City Rush in the East Coast Hockey League. I had the opportunity to catch up with both of them on this week's episode of the podcast. Without any further ado, here's David and Scott. Welcome back to Hockey North Weekly here. My guest on the podcast, Rapid City Rush head coach and general manager Scott Burt. Scott, you're from Mackenzie. You're a northern boy. How does somebody from Mackenzie end up in Rapid City, South Dakota?
Well, I was born in Mackenzie. Okay. I don't remember Mackenzie much. My dad was with the RCMP, so he was stationed in Mackenzie when I was born, and we moved from there to Penticton. But you go 3 hours north to Chetwin. I spent about 4 or 5 years up there from when I was 16, Jesus, to almost 19. And then obviously I spent a couple years in Prince George, or I spent a year in Prince George with the Spruce Kings there. So I'm pretty familiar with the Great White North.
Yeah. You played in the old Rocky Mountain Junior Hockey League, 93, 94, 92 penalty minutes, 18 goals, 26 helpers, 51 games. Just talk about that year and how that league prepared you for the Western Hockey League.
Yeah, and you know what? I went to camp. Matter of fact, I how it all started is I was in Osoyoos there. I want to say it was BC Best Ever under 17, and I ended up making the team. And I was listed by Seattle. I went to camp in Seattle. And then right out of Seattle, they wanted me to play, better hockey than, where he actually said, "Hey, it would be good for you to go up to Prince George." So I spent a full year up there, and it was, I mean, it was great because there was a lot of older guys, and it kind of got you into that competition and that compete level. We had a young team. They've had some 16-year-old guys. So we all kind of hung together and we learned from some of the older guys, right? So for me, it was a stepping stone as a 16-year-old to play my 17-year-old in the Western Hockey League.
Yeah, as a gritty league back then, you had Davy Jones and Don Campbell who had over 160 PIMs. You had Trent
Yeah,
Potskin that over had 120 PIMs. You played with a young Quinn Hancock that played in the Western League with
yeah.
Calgary and Prince George. How did playing in that league kind of toughen you up and get you ready for that league, Western Hockey League?
Well, obviously there was long bus rides, right? So that was a big deal for us. And again, it was my first really experience of playing with older guys, right? Played Bantam hockey, Pee Wee hockey, but now you turn 16, you're playing with men, guys that are 20, 18, 19, 17 years old. So they've had that experience, right? They've kind of go through that little maturity. We were just young, dumb, and we just all we wanted to do was go and play hockey, and we did that. It was fun. And again, you learn from those guys. I remember one practice there. Dale Marquette was our coach. Uh, Trent Potskin didn't show up because he shot a moose out in the uh, out in the woods, and he ended up showing up, but he had blood all over him. And Dale said, "Okay, well, go back and get your moose." So that was an eye opener right there. But it was kind of, you grew up there, but for me it wasn't a big deal because with my dad being with the RCMP every 5 years we were transferred, right? So I had an opportunity to meet friends every 5 years, and I got a lot of close friends that are still living up north now.
Yeah. So from there, you end up with the Thunderbirds. You play about a year and a half there. Went to Swift Current. Then you had a little bit of a tour there through Alberta. You played for the Edmonton Ice, got dealt to Red Deer. Started then with Red Deer. I think
Yeah.
the next season after that, then went back to Edmonton. Just take us through that Western Hockey League experience where you played for four different teams.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Sometimes when you play for that many teams, you're kind of labeled as a suitcase. But for me, I went and I played that year and a half in Seattle. Bob Torrey was the guy who listed me, the GM who's now with Tri Cities. Matter of fact, the coach at the time was Don Knockbar, another Prince George guy, right? So I kind of went. I went there, played a year and a half. Bob was let go. Russ Farwell came in. I wasn't one of his guys, so I got traded to Swift Current and went all the way there my second year. I think I played 9, 10 games that second year, and then went to Swift Current and made that long trek and drive by myself. Showed up there and had great teammates there. Again, Todd McClellan was my coach there, so I learned from a great NHL coach. And then the next year was the expansion draft. So Bob Torrey became the GM of the Edmonton Ice. Right now, you got to think about this. Bob Torrey was my first GM that listed me and brought me to Seattle. So it was a no-brainer that he drafted me in the expansion draft to go to Edmonton. I started in Edmonton, and we didn't have a very good team. We started out pretty hot, and then I think we lost like 19 games in a row. We just weren't very good. Trade deadline was coming up, and they came to me and asked me and said, "Hey, listen, you're having a good year. There's teams that are asking about you. Would you like to go play in the playoffs?" I said yes. That's when I went to Red Deer, finished the season with Red Deer, and then I had went through the summer, lived with Terry Ryan, also played up in Quesnel too. He's a good friend of mine. Um, we lived together in Red Deer, and then the next year I got traded back to Edmonton. And the reason why is they wanted a 50 goal scorer or 45 goal scorer, whatever it was. That year I had 42 goals, and the guy I got traded for, John Catcher, ended up having 45 or something like that. So I mean, it was a push, no brainer. But I had an opportunity to play with good players back in Edmonton, and we had a good little push there. And then I turned pro after that. My centerman was Chris Knobloch, and my left winger, I played on the right side, was Jay Henderson. So Hendy had 49 goals, I had 42, and Norbert had 20. So he just kept on feeding the speed to the outside, and we had a good year and a fun year.
Yeah, you talked about, Chris Knobloch, Todd McClellan, all these pro guys that all these coaches that you see now that are coaching in the NHL. What did you take from those types of guys that you either played with that had the instincts or traits of a coach, or guys that coached in junior that have now been in the pros for a long time?
Well, think about this, right? And put Don Knockbar into there, into
Yep.
that category too, right? Because he was with LA, and I learned from Don. I spent 4 years with him in Spokane. Plus, I played for him, right? And we always had the connection because we were northern guys, northern BC guys, right? So for me, in all honesty, I took the good and I took the bad, right? As a coach, what would I do as a coach, and what wouldn't I do in certain situations? And that kind of made me a real good coach. I played for many of coaches. I played for some really good coaches. And I played for some guys that maybe I wouldn't take some of the stuff. But again, you go back to it. I played for Ryan McGill, and he's now an assistant coach with the New Jersey Devils, right? So a lot of the coaches that I have been really went to the NHL. So I keep in contact with a lot of them. And it's for me, it's unbelievable because I ask them for different strategies, different systems. How would you handle this? How would you handle that? And it's helped me as a coach. It's helped me grow as a coach, and it's also helping me help my coaches here in Rapid City.
Yeah, you talked about 96, 97, how you were rooming with Terry Ryan. You had Aaron Asham as a teammate, Jonathan Zakuski, Jesse Wall, and Lance Ward. There's a few NHL names in there that played. Stephen Pete played for a
EJ
while
Young,
as a tough
yeah.
guy. Just talk BJ Young. Yeah, I just talk about that group in Red Deer when you went to the playoffs.
It was unbelievable. We had an unbelievable group that was so tight. We were tight on the ice. We were tight off the ice. I remember after games on Saturday night game, we'd all go up north to Boston Pizza. And we'd have pizza and beers, right? And the coaches, I don't think they knew much about that, but that's what we did when we were young. We had fun on the ice. Yeah. And I still am in contact with a lot. It's I talked to Wally when I was in Spokane. I talked to Jesse Wall, and obviously he's with Detroit, right? So I keep in touch with a lot of ex players, a lot of guys that I've been with. A lot of guys went to the NHL. Now I didn't go to the NHL. I had a little stint there when I went to a couple camps. But for me, I just took that knowledge and knowing those guys, and it's been the best for me because I consider all my teammates good friends.
Yeah. You talked about the closeness, how you go out after games. Can you just talk about that part again? You kind of cut out there for a minute.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we would say we play Friday, Saturday. We had a Saturday game in Red Deer. We'd go North Red Deer where the coaches wouldn't know. We'd go to Boston Pizza there. We'd play pool, eat pizza, and have some beers, right? So we stuck together. It was fun. We had a lot of good road trips. I remember one time we were in Moose Jaw. We got stuck in Moose Jaw because of snowstorm. We rented out these little cabins, and again, it was a free for all. We like to have our beers, but we played hard, right? And that year we lost out to Lethbridge, which Lethbridge ended up going on to the Memorial Cup, and they had a stacked team there too. So it went back and forth. I think we lost the game 6, but man, was it a good run?
Yeah. You talked about going to pro camps. You ended up uh, playing primarily in the East Coast Hockey
Yeah.
League here, as I I bring up your profile again as I'm flipping back and forth between your season stats. You started with Toledo, went to Wheeling, played with Idaho for quite a while before going to Utah and Alaska. You just touch on the type of league that the East Coast is and how maybe it doesn't quite get the respect that it deserves.
Mhm.
Because I've been to a few East Coast games and I don't think the gap is quite as large in terms of the speed and the skill that maybe a lot of other fans think in terms of the NHL. Maybe the passing isn't quite as crisp and certain plays aren't as sharp, but I think the league is actually a little bit more comparable than most people think.
Well, think about this. I just had one of my players from 2 years ago, Rory Cairns, play with Calgary Flames. Right. So right now I have four players that are up in the American Hockey League, a step under the NHL. Right. So and it's not just our affiliate with the Calgary Flames. I have Chase Pauls, who played up there with the Cougars. He's up in Henderson right now. Right. So it's close for the players. The ECHL now is recognized, not necessarily the coast anymore. It's the ECHL. But what it is, it's a development league, right? We're going to get to 32 teams, just like the NHL. I think we have 29 right now. Every single team has an affiliation. I want to say we have, I want to say we have seven players right now under contract with Calgary. If it's either the Calgary Wranglers or it's the Calgary Flames, right? So, they entrust us with developing their players to get them ready to the next level, and we're seeing that. I have guys right now that are on ECHL contracts that are playing up in the American Hockey League, right? And it's a testament to my coaches, and it's a testament to the league on how we continue to develop these players to get to a the American Hockey League and then ultimately the NHL where they want to be, right? So for me, I had a proud moment again when I saw Rory Cairns get called up, which was pretty special.
And of course, too, you have a couple other guys that played junior in Prince George. Dustin Mans, who I know, I called his games with the Spruce Kings. Had some really good years, and then you have Jackson Leopard, who started in Prince
Yeah,
George,
yeah.
finished at the Winnipeg Ice. How are those guys looking?
Great, great. Matter of fact, it's unfortunate through this league. It's a tough league. We have to deal as a coach GM. You're not just out there coaching like we are in the Western Hockey League. Here's your 20, 25 guys. You mold them in and you go from there, right? We have to do a lot of the scouting ourselves. We talk to a lot of agents, and we listen to our affiliation, right? So we got to a point there that. We had two defensemen called up. We only had 4D on our roster. We had to make a trade. We ended up trading Dustin to Bloomington. Um, and then we got Chase Pauls and Jackson Leopard in a deal earlier because we were hurting for players. But it's a tough league because you might not have that same roster 3 games in a row, right? Like I lost two players to the American Hockey League after Friday's game, right? We still had to play Saturday and Sunday, right? So there that's it's tough that way. But we deal with it. Davis Payne, who's now running the power play in Winnipeg right now, and he started out in the ECHL up in Alaska. He told me straight up, he said, "Brady, this is the hardest league to coach in." Because you have to have your hands on everything, and it prepares you for the next step, right? The American Hockey League, and ultimately, as some coaches' dreams are to make it to the NHL, or some coaches just want to coach, right? So for me, it's continue to grow as a coach and continuing to put the best team we can on the ice, right? And then develop the players, because that's ultimately at the end, that's what you look for, you want. Yeah, you want to win a championship. I won three as a player, but it is hard. It's a little bit different on the coaching side because you don't have the same players that you recruit in the summertime.
You talked about those three championships as a player, and we take a look at these things 03, 04, 06, 07, 2010, 2011 there. You had some really good years with Idaho, and then you finished things off with Alaska. Just talk about those two experiences, the long-standing time you had with Idaho, and then finishing
Sure.
it off with Alaska as the captain.
Yeah, well, it was the championships. took a little bit, and you had to learn how to win. Okay, so my first year in Idaho, we lost in Game 7 in the finals to San Diego. The next year, we lost in double OT Game 6 in the finals. And then when we joined the ECHL from the West Coast Hockey League, that's when we won our first championship. I want to say, 2 years later, we won again. After that year, I went to Utah. We lost in the conference finals. And then I went up to Alaska, in which we lost in Game 7 of the finals again. And then we won 2 years later. So I've been fortunate to play in a lot of big games and a lot of big series, and obviously win three championships. Should be six, but three's okay now. I just got to win one as a coach now.
Yeah, how do those long, grueling runs, and even on the runs where you come up short, how does it help, mold character and help you come back bigger and stronger the next year, not as a player? How does it keep you on your toes?
Well, if you can stay healthy through those runs, it's awesome. But for me, I had I think 3 shoulder surgeries, a foot surgery, a hand a couple times. So I had some grueling stuff that I had to deal with. But those experiences to get to the finals only wanted you to push more, right? So and then when you win, you want to continue to win. And you want to be known. I mean, I look for players that are captains of teams or have won championships because they've played in big situations. And for me, it was all about growing, developing, and learning from the older players. Even when I was considered a veteran, I was still learning from the veteran players as well as the young guys coming up.
What was it like to live in those areas that weren't quite considered, hockey hotbed states like Idaho and Alaska? How was it, what was it like to live in those places where you were kind of, the major game in town, even though you weren't an NHL market?
Well, I could tell you this, Alaska was unbelievable. I had the greatest time up there. I spent 3 years as a player, 2 as a coach, and then I went on to my coaching career. That was unbelievable. I had an opportunity to meet my wife up there. Our daughter was born up there, and that was then I retired after we won a championship, and then got myself into coaching. Idaho is unbelievable. Idaho, if you know Kelowna, it's similar to Kelowna. It's beautiful in the summers. Boise State football is continuing to grow. Um, Idaho Steelheads, they're continuing to grow. I think they've had 40 plus straight sellouts. So hockey's growing there. They're just when I got there, I think they had about 350,000 people. And now they're up to close to 1 million people. So during COVID, a lot of people were moving to Idaho because they could work remotely. And it's so beautiful. You like fly fishing, you like just to get away. There's mountains there. It's hot in the summertime. It's probably the cleanest, safest city that I've ever been in. But yeah, it's growing to become a hockey community, that's for sure. Obviously Toledo, we played at the old sports arena there. That got tore down a couple years after I was done playing there. Wheeling has been in, I want to say in the ECHL or East Coast Hockey League back in the day, probably almost 50 years. Um, so that was a little bit of a different place. Um, but hey, listen, I love being out west, and I have nothing but good things to say of all the places that I've played at.
What does it mean to you to see Utah now have an NHL franchise? You played 1 year there when it was an East Coast League franchise, and what do you think now that it's the city and the state is growing enough to be an NHL market?
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And they still get like we were just in Utah, and they were still getting 7,000 fans, right? So we were yeah, they had the NHL team there, but the Grizzlies are still welcome there, and they still come out to watch, right? So another great city. It's only going to get better. I think the hockey and the owner that they have there with the NHL team, it just wants to make it right and make it good and want it to be successful, and they're going to do that. It's a good spot. Salt Lake City is a great spot.
Yeah. Were you an outdoorsy person yourself growing up? You talked about the outdoor recreation that's in places like Boise. Did you have any outdoor activities that you enjoyed as a kid that you were able to carry out as an adult?
Well, I was not a hunter because we were always playing about around that time. Um, when I was in Alaska, I did get drawn for a caribou tag. Okay. So I went hunting the year before. I didn't have a tag, and my buddy got a caribou. And then I put in the next year and I got drawn for a tag. So I was like all gung ho. I'm going to become a hunter. I'm going to get our own meat. We're going to be great. And then I got the job in Spokane. So I had to give that tag back. So for me, I'm not per se a hunter, but I learned a lot about fishing when I was up in Alaska. My wife taught me a lot. Her family taught me a lot. And, you know, when we go up there, pretty much every summer to catch a lot of salmon and fill our freezer for the wintertime.
Yeah. Obviously, you started with coaching 2011, 2012. You ended up in Spokane. You talked about being with Don Knockbar as well as
Yeah.
a few other coaches. Just touch on that 6 year run in Spokane.
Yeah, it was great. It was really my first real growth as a coach, right? So when I retired in Alaska, became an assistant coach there. Um, and I kind of learned the pro side of it. But then got the opportunity to go back to the Western Hockey League, and I consider the Western Hockey a mini NHL. We had to deal with a lot of NHL scouts, a lot of NHL GMs that were coming through, obviously scouting our players. Opportunities for myself to work with young first rounders, the guys that were drafted, see how excited they were, and kind of break their foundation. And one thing I learned from Don Knockbar is every player always will revert back to their foundation, right? So if you're in the Western Hockey League, it takes it takes a little bit more time for teams to grow because they're young players. A lot of the players come from minor hockey, and we have to break that minor hockey mentality to build themselves up to the Western Hockey League, and then when they turn pro, and then when they move on, right? So everyone reverts back to their foundation, and we just want to build the best foundation. And I had an opportunity to learn from Don and Dan Lambert, who's with the Calgary Flames right now in Spokane. It was unbelievable. Had an opportunity to coach some great players, some guys that are in the NHL now, some guys that are up and down, and some guys that were first rounders. So for me, it was awesome because I learned from the right people.
Mm-hmm. Now you've been a head coach and general manager the past handful of seasons with the Rapid City Rush. You're in South Dakota, not exactly a hockey hotbed, but what's it like living in a state like that where you're trying to grow the game, you're trying to up the profile of your organization. What's that like being a part of that?
Well, it's awesome. This was my first. They gave me my first real head coaching stint, and that's been great. Rapid City was in the Central Hockey League back when I was in the ECHL, and I never had an opportunity to play in the Central Hockey League. But they have a good fan base. It's a smaller community. It's about 80,000. So it's where Mount Rushmore is, and it's growing. Hockey's continuing to grow here. We have good support and we have unbelievable ownership. Now, our ownership isn't here in Rapid City. Our ownership is based out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and they own us, Trois Riviere, and Greenville in the ECHL. But their background is NASCAR. So it's pretty crazy, but they're unbelievable owners. We fly everywhere. They take unbelievable care of us. Our players have really nice apartments. And again, like I said, they're well taken care of. And maybe this place isn't the hockey hotbed or a place where the weather is always nice, like a Florida, Jacksonville, Orlando. So you really got to, for us, when we were recruiting, we were close to 9 hours from Minnesota. So we have to recruit wisely. We have to recruit guys that are around this area that understand, that want to be here. And the word is that it's getting out that Rapid City is a great place to come play hockey, get treated well, and develop. And we want to move our players on.
What's that dynamic like when you're with it owned by a group that owns three different franchises, and their main passion is NASCAR, which is a huge American pastime, depending on where you live. What's that dynamic like when you're involved with a group that has ownership of three different teams?
Well, it's to be honest, it's a little tough because we can't trade within each other. But our ownership's unreal. They tend to see us on the road. Our president comes to meet us on the road. Um, 2 years ago, or maybe it was last year, we had the opportunity to take our players when we were down in Greenville to the shop, the race shop, and kind of learn a little bit about NASCAR there. But it was awesome, and our ownership is unbelievable. They take probably the best care of any team that I've played on. With us here, and then obviously with Greenville and Twa are taken care of as well.
Yeah. How would you have best described yourself as a player, and who did you look up to growing up and try to pattern your game after?
Yeah, it may be a little outside the box, but I like Steve Thomas. Back when he played, they called him I think it's Stumpy.
Yeah.
But he just played a little gritty. He did a little bit of everything. I think he got into coaching there for a while there, but he was kind of a guy that I kind of modeled, I guess, my game after. But then I mean, it's similar to guys like Darcy Tucker and that we had to play against, right? They're gritty guys. They could score. I had a lot of speed, but if I looked at a couple guys, Rod Brendamore is similar. I like his coaching style, but more so the way he played the game of hockey, right? He was gritty. He played tough. He was always out there for defensive draws, killed penalties, blocked shots, fought the occasion, and could score goals, right? So those were the kind of the players. It wasn't necessarily all the fancy guys that I was looking at.
Yeah. You brought up some interesting points in terms of not necessarily patting your game after some of the fancy guys or some of the fan favorites. Your league deals with a lot of amateur tryout deals at the end of the season. We're getting that time of year where the junior regular season is ending, and for some of the non-playoff teams, they'll look at ATOs or school or whatever. And when you have players that are kind of on that short-term contract, if you will, where you kind of give them a taste of pro hockey. Uh, Sometimes when you bring players in that are offensive guys, primarily in the junior league, and you ask them maybe to play a little bit of a different style because you have only certain roles available. What's that conversation like, and how receptive are most players coming from that junior game where they might have to crash and bang a little bit more in order to stay
Sure.
in the lineup every night?
Yeah, and that's what it is, right? We want to develop these guys and turn them into pros, right? We want them to be pros. But for us, I just don't bring players in on ATOs. I look to see what our needs are. We look to see who's out there, who's available, and who can help us, not only for this year, but also for next year as well, right? So typically, if I'm bringing a player in, he's going to sign a contract and then see where it goes from there. It's up to the player at the end of the day to see if they can to make it and turn pro. But for me, we look for players. We're not a team that brings in eight to 10 guys. We just can't do that because we're kind of on a little bit of an island here in Rapid City. But we tend to bring in 3 to 4, maybe 5 guys if needed, the rest of the way.
Mhm. When you take a look at the landscape of junior hockey that's changing, you have uh, the eligibility, which has now changed, where major junior players are eligible to get NCAA scholarships. Um, it's not just exclusive to junior A players anymore. When the pool itself is going to get much larger in regards to major junior players being eligible to play down south. Uh, how does that enhance or potentially impact recruiting for teams like yours that when you have guys on the senior end of their eligibility looking to go pro, how is that going to positively impact who you're looking at potentially in terms of players?
There's times that we get 20-year-old guys they're finished major junior hockey and they want to turn pro right away. So again, you go back to breaking their foundation and doing what we can to be the best to develop those players. But the players that are leaving Major Junior that are going down to play down south NCAA, there's an extra 4 more years for them to play, right? So by the time we're looking at those guys, they have another 4 years of been playing hockey and learning the ropes that way. So we'll get more of a mature guy, a mature player. But again, they always revert back to their foundation. So we do have to break them in and show them the pro way.
Yeah. I know this option wasn't available to you when you played because the rules had just changed, I think, at that time in terms of college eligibility. But if that was available to you as a player back then, or even if you were a player now and that option was available to you, is that something you would have considered a little more seriously if the developmental model had worked both ways?
Look at that. Um, if I was a player, I would have that opportunity to go after that, right? They have the right now to do that. So for me, I would look at that. When I was in Prince George, I was talking to Michigan State. Brian Adams, who was my lane mate, ended up going to play 4 years in Michigan State. But for me, it was about being in the Western Hockey League. But if I had the 4 years, I would have had to make that decision, but I probably would have, been a little bit more mature than just turning pro, and probably should have went to school, just like my brother did.
Yeah. I guess I'll ask you this fun question here. Maybe you can you'll have to maybe wind back the Rolodex a little bit to pick a handful of your teammates from years gone by. But if you were stranded on a desert island with three of your teammates from any team you want, who would they be and why?
Terry Ryan, because he would figure out something to do. If it's singing, he always got that party started. And I figure he would be a good guy to have on the island. I think Brad Larson would be another guy to have on that island. Um, oh man. And then if I went back to even back to my pro years, probably Jeremy Millimak, uh, who I uh, um, who I actually learned how to be a captain from. I got two of his boys on my team right now, but he knows how to fly fish, and we tend to go up to Alaska together fly fishing. So he'd be a guy to catch the fish for us.
Yeah. Yeah, you said you played against Terry Ryan when we played in Quesnel, and then you played with him in Red Deer. What was that like to play with him in Red Deer?
With him in Red Deer. We also played together in Idaho.
Oh,
Yeah, so we've been together for a while. Then we played together the U17 Team Pacific deal. So Terry and I have been around together, but he's what you see now. Obviously, he's a movie star now, or he's doing his Shoresy deal. And he's always in the limelight, but that's just who he was, right? He was the guy back in the day that would play all the tunes. He loves the Beatles. So he would play all these little funky old 80s, 70s songs and got us going. So he's a beauty for sure, and he was a good roommate.
well, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. Good luck the rest of the season, and we might be able to do this again here in the future.
I don't think you know what's going on or what has had with my health. I had emergency brain surgery on December 6th.
Oh,
So I was diagnosed with a tumor, brain cancer. I went through radiation, and I'm back now, and I'm looking to get back behind the bench here very shortly. So that could be for another podcast. But yeah, I feel great, and I'm ready to go. So anytime you want to hook up, I have no problems talking about that, and I want the word out because a lot of ECHL teams and a lot of teams and a lot of NHL coaches have been calling me as of late, and I'm just excited to get back to my group.
yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that you're doing better, and maybe we can shed more light on that issue sometime in the future.
Sounds good, buddy. Anytime. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Scott. Welcome back to Hockey North Weekly. With me now is Portland Winterhawks rookie forward and Fort St. James product, David Hoy. David, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, David, you're in your rookie season here with the Portland Winterhawks. Portland currently sitting in fifth in the Western Conference. I guess for you in your rookie season, How do you think things are going south of the border for you?
Yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a learning year for me, but lots of new guys on the team this year. So I think we had a pretty good start, but definitely pick up some more points before playoff push here.
Yeah, it's a bit of a retooling year. You lost a lot of talent from last year's team that went to the league finals. Um, Just talk about the increased opportunity players like yourself and some of the other rookies are getting to kind of show what they can do this year as this team is trying to build between, maybe 1 or 2 seasons from now.
Yeah, I think it's good for a lot of the young guys just to be able to get more experience and learn from some of the older guys that are still here from last year. I think we should use experience in future years, make a run for the championship.
Yeah. I guess just talk about the jump going from the academy to the Western Hockey League. Obviously, anytime you make the jump, whether it's AAA, academy hockey, whatever, pace of play, time and space is always a bit of a factor and adjustment young players have to get used to. What's the adjustment been like for you, and uh, what's been maybe the one thing that's maybe taken the longest to adapt to at the Western League level?
Yeah, it's just the jump is more just like everyone's bigger, stronger, faster. So you just gotta like you're obviously gonna have less time and space, play harder. So the hardest thing is just like being ready for every battle because like nothing's gonna be easy. No, everyone's gonna play hard on you. So kind of just be ready for every battle. Less time and space, just stuff like that.
hmm What's it like living in Portland?
It's pretty good. It rains a lot. It's kind of like Vancouver. But yeah, it's pretty good. Big city.
Yeah. Just talk about what it's like in terms of the fan base there. Portland actually has a pretty rich hockey history in the Northwest. So does Seattle as well. But just talk about, the fan base that you have and how it might differ from some of the Canadian markets.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky. I mean, we get lots of fans every game, like usually around 6,000 plus. Friends are pretty passionate, but yeah, since there's a lot of people here, so they really enjoy hockey, but they're still learning about the game. Like when we went to Saskatchewan, they definitely don't have the same market that we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess just maybe talk about you being from Fort St. James, how you first got into hockey. Obviously, there's a lot of good players that have come through that Vanderhoof, Fort St. James area. Was talking to Terrell Goldsmith um, earlier in the season about this on our podcast. What was it like growing up there, and how did you first get involved in hockey?
Yeah, so my dad, he played hockey too when he was younger, so he kind of got me and my brothers on skates when we were 3 or 4, just skated around, and then there's a minor hockey program in Fort St. James, so I played that until Adam. It was good. I mean, it's not a great program, but it's still fun. Just have lots of family up there that plays hockey too.
hmm And you said you played there until Adam. Did you play in Prince George for a couple of years before going the academy route, or what happened there?
Yeah, I moved to Prince George just for, better minor hockey experience, just develop a bit more. Played there for 3 or 4 years and then went down to the academy.
Yeah. Just talk about your time in Prince George. Obviously, your first memories are in your home community in Fort St. James, but just talk about your time in Prince George, some of the teams that you played on, and who you played with.
Yeah, I played with a lot of good players actually. Played with a couple of buddies who also went to academy, but a lot of guys in the Western League like Smith Redmond, Chase, Arrington, Cam Schmidt, those type of guys, Diego Johnson. We all played on Pee Wee teams and Adam teams together, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah, it must have been no shortage of offense on those teams. Some of those guys are pretty
No.
good.
Yeah, pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. How would you best describe yourself as a player?
Just 200-foot player that, right now I'm still developing my game, but more just a reliable 200-foot centerman.
Yeah. Who are maybe some of your idols growing up or players that you watch that you try and emulate your game after?
Yeah, growing up, I mean, it's Sidney Crosby was always one just because that's a popular one. But as now that I've actually like watched the game more, probably like a guy like Braden Point, I feel like it's a good guy to resemble my game after.
Mhm. Now you're from Fort St. James. Some of the more notable guys that have come through there are one of them's a coach with the Prince George Cougars, and Jim Playfair, his brother Larry, of course, a
Hmm.
well-known hockey player. Do you know that family at all?
Yeah, I'm actually related to them, cousins.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I we keep in touch with them a little bit and see them when we play Prince George every once in a while.
yeah. Has Jim share any hockey stories with you?
Yeah, you shared a couple for sure over the years.
Yeah. Anyone in particular that stands out to you?
Uh, it was more just like when he was with the Oilers, just like talking about how the top guys, how they take care of their bodies, how they go to work every day, just stuff like that.
Mhm. What's kind of like the day-to-day grind like for players like yourself in the Western Hockey League? How you kind of have to, treat your bodies as you say. Just talk about some of the day in and day in out kind of stuff because the nutrition and fitness aspect of the game has really evolved over the past 2 to 3 decades. And I know it wasn't that long ago guys would go into camp to get into shape, but now you have to be in tip-top condition to in order to hit the ground running.
Yeah, so our trainer here, his name's Rich Campbell. He's really good. He keeps us dialed in. It's just before training camp, he like make sure you set goals and kind of keeps checking on you so you're ready for camp and fitness testing. But then once you're here, you just gotta be he keeps up on like your body fat percentage, make sure you're eating well. And then we have stuff like we work out every day, and then we also have like ice tubs that you can go in after, massages, just stuff like that to keep your body in shape.
Mhm. Um, we talk a lot. We've talked a lot about it, the U.S. division on a lot of the past episodes. I want to get your take on this too. You got teams like Tri-City, Spokane, Everett's always in the mix. Seattle's proving to be a tougher out here, even though they're in the midst of a bit of a rebuild. What makes the U.S. division so tough, and how does that level of competition make your team better, knowing that there's going to be no easy nights when you play your American rivals?
Yeah, I think there's just something about every team wants to be better than the other in the U.S. division, so no one's ever trying to be at the bottom of the barrel. Everyone's trying to be at the top, but so when everyone's good, you kind of develop a hate for the other teams and just want to beat them every night.
Mhm. Just take us through the Portland Seattle rivalry. I've heard it from many fans and players on both sides, and how the fan bases will kind of kibitz one another. I know you're just in your rookie season, but just maybe experiencing either on the ice or in the stands, it must get pretty raucous between both buildings.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy sometimes. Like usually whenever we play, it's almost sold out rink. I mean even one time in Portland, there was a fight in the stands. I'm guessing it was between Seattle and our fans, but yeah, it can get pretty crazy sometimes.
Yeah. What's your favorite part about Portland?
Um, I don't know. It's still kind of learning about it, but like there's lots of nice, good food here. There's a lot of different like types of culture here too. So it's kind of nice just to see like it's almost like a different part of the world to me. But yeah, it's kind of cool just to learn about different types of culture and stuff like that.
Yeah. Just touch on your time with the Okanagan Hockey Academy programs. You played U15 varsity, then U17 prep, U18 prep. You were a point per game guy at most of those levels. Uh, just touch on the decision to go the academy route instead of playing AAA with programs, like the Caribou Cougars and that sort of thing.
It was more just I played a year of Pee Wee in Kelowna, and OHA reached out to a lot of the guys on my team, and I don't know, it just seemed like a good option for me to go develop every day, go to school with some of my buddies. And once I got there, I kind of just stuck there because I kept getting better and better, and then I ended up making it here.
How would you say your game has grown or evolved over the years?
Yeah, I definitely used to be a little bit more not as have as much grit in my game. I used to kind of be a softer player, but then I realized over the years like you got to be tough to play, or else you're gonna get chewed up. So yeah, I kind of just developed, made sure my defensive game was good, and then worked on my offensive game over the years as well.
What's the message from your coach? Kyle McDonough is the head guy now. Mike Johnson just handles the GM duties with the Winterhawks after going upstairs after the playoff run last year. What's the message from him, not only to you, but to the rest of the players uh, when approaching a game, whether it's playing a certain opponent or just kind of refining your systems and making sure that your team is playing with the proper habits heading towards the playoffs.
Yeah, like every game. So like, first of all, you gotta have faceless opponents. Like, no matter who you're playing, you gotta be at your best. So, and everyone's trying to win right now. So every mistake's gonna cost you. So it's just about being sharp in the little details, like breaking out, neutral zone, ozone. Just everything's got to be in touch.
Mhm. Favorite team growing up?
The Oilers, Edmonton.
Well,
Yeah,
there's a lot of Oiler fans, a lot of Canuck fans here in
yeah,
like the Prince George area, and those are definitely two of the most popular teams uh, since I've moved out here almost a decade ago now. Do you have any pregame superstitions or things that you kind of have to do to kind of get yourself mentally psyched up for a game?
Not really, but at home games, me, Cade Rudig, and Reed Brown, we do like a stick handling passing thing that we like to do, and then other than that, it's kind of just go with the flow, make sure I feel good.
Yeah. Any pregame meals that you have to have?
Yeah, usually just fettuccine Alfredo, pretty classic.
Yeah. It's usually the fettuccine Alfredo or the chicken parmesan that's usually the two classics or the two preferred ones in regards
Yeah,
to the hockey players there.
yeah.
Um, Obviously, every hockey player's dream is to play pro or go to the NHL, but if that doesn't work out for you, David, what are some of your other professional aspirations?
Yeah, I mean, obviously want to play hockey as long as I can, but I also wouldn't mind staying in the game, like just being a coach, general manager, scout, something like that. Or then if it's outside of hockey, probably just like business, just some kind of business job, go to business for school, something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful too that you have a lot of ex-pro players taking these uh, business slash executive jobs now, whether it be NHL, junior, whatever. Is it kind of inspiring or kind of give you some confidence knowing that more and more players are looking to that avenue as a way to stay in the game even though they're not playing anymore?
Yeah, it's kind of nice knowing that like if you can't play the game, you can still be a part of the game and still have fun with that. So it's kind of nice to know that that's there.
Mhm. I'm going to ask you a fun question here, and I've asked this at the end of our episodes in a lot of our shows here. So you're stranded on a desert island with three of your teammates. Who would you pick and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'll probably bring Jordan Duguay. He's one of my good buddies on my team right now. Reed Brown, and then we probably need a smart guy. So I'll say bring like Alex Weirmeyer. He's pretty smart. So
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of the American stuff, and what's it been like to live with the new rules now in regards to the eligibility of major junior players now having that option open to them to be eligible to play NCAA hockey? You had a couple of players come back to you through the NCAA over the year, Alex Weirmeyer being one of them, Joel Plant coming from the Nanaimo Clippers. What's that like to now have that option open to you that wasn't there just a season ago.
Yeah, it's pretty nice actually knowing that you're able to have more schools watch you. It's just more exposure, and then it's been good for our team to get those two forwards to come play with us. They've helped our team a lot, so it's just better for everyone.
Yeah, they talked to you about their decision to come or what was involved in that. I know they were both on the protected list, obviously, in years past, but they talked to you much about the experience at all?
Yeah, I think they were just it was a little bit confusing for them at first, I think, just like deciding what to do, but then ultimately they just decided if they come here for a year, then they can get, just that much better before they go off to college or go pro.
Yeah. So I'll end the interview with this question here for you, David. The Portland Winterhawks will be successful in the playoffs this year if they do what?
Just playing, we just gotta stick to our game, right? Like we have a lot of young guys, but we just need to play mature against other teams and like say we're gonna be fourth, fifth, third seed somewhere in there. So we just gotta play well on home ice, play hard on away ice, and then we'll be fine.
All right, David. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this week's episode of the podcast. Good luck to you the rest of your season, and maybe we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right, so there you have it. That's David Hoyle, the Portland Winterhawks, as well as Rapid City Rush head coach and general manager Scott Burt. These are our guests for this week's episode of the Hockey North podcast. And for my co-host Tyler Lazant, this is Brendan Paulu bidding you adieu for another week of Hockey North Weekly. We'll be back next week as we continue to track the playoff races as well as the end of the regular season across all the junior and university levels of hockey, as well as dipping into pro as well as we're getting into that exciting time of year again.